Hello YouTube, my name is Tyler and this is a reading vlog for The Poppy War. I'm going to be reacting and reading this. I've actually already finished it, but I'm just coming in to tell you this is full of spoilers. The whole thing is spoiler filled. I talk about everything that happens in this book as I read it, just so I can chat about it, including reading the last page of the book. So if you don't want spoilers, this is not the vlog for you. I did do a review of this book in my third week of March reading vlog, so that will be coming out next week. If you don't want spoilers, wait till next weekend, you can watch that vlog. But yeah, I just wanted to warn you, this is full of spoilers and I'm not giving a lot of spoiler warnings, so you just need to buckle in. I am going to vlog reading The Poppy War. I started it today, which is the 8th of March, expecting that I was going to immediately not be into it and I was going to be able to DNF it and return it to the library. However, that was not my experience. I read about 5.5 pages, almost 6 pages, and I'm invested. Maybe invested is a strong word. I'm intrigued. So I'm gonna do a Poppy War reading vlog, assuming that it continues to have my attention, my interest, my intrigue. I'm gonna vlog while I read this. I haven't done a dedicated book vlog in a while. I think the last one I did was, what was it? What was that book? Battle Royale, which I think was a similar time, March of last year-ish, I think. So it's been a while. So hopefully this will be interesting. I think it will be fun because one, it's a popular book. Two, it's kind of older, not like old, but it's an older favorite of the fantasy world. Fantasy booktube, fantasy bookish community. So I think it might be fun to read in a vlog because I don't have any clue what happens in here. I hear that it's violent, and I know people love this, and it has intrigued me just from how people talk about it, and they talk about how violent it is, and I think they talk about it was the evil girl trope or whatever, unhinged girls thing, which I can get down with, which is what intrigued me about this. But besides that, I know literally nothing about this book. I don't know a damn thing about it. So I think it would be fun to vlog as I read this. I've talked about I'm not a huge fantasy reader, but I loved Babel. So I was like, I'll give this a shot because I'm intrigued. And I really liked R.F. Kuang's writing. And I am still really liking her writing. Maybe R.F. Kuang is the only fantasy writer I can read. I don't know. We'll see. And yeah, anyways, so I'm not very far in, but I'm excited. Hello, it has been a couple days since I have checked in. I recognize my hair looks wild. I'm still not super far in. I haven't hit 100 pages. I just finished chapter 4. I'm on page 84. I'm still enjoying myself. I don't have a ton to say, but I did want to come in and say I'm really glad that I read the note from the author in the back of this before I got too far into this, because I did not realize that this is an exploration, a commentary on Chinese-Japanese relations in the, I guess, 19th and 20th century. I didn't realize that that is what this book is diving into, and I'm really glad that I have that context. I don't have a huge wealth of knowledge on Chinese-Japanese relations, although I know there is some tension there, to say the least. I am aware that there was some Japanese brutality during World War II, but that's kind of most of what I know. So I have done just a little bit of Googling, just things that kind of catch my attention when reading this and trying to see maybe what parallels there are to reality. just so I can fully appreciate this. I'm not expecting to become a scholar, an expert on anything like this. I'm not expecting to go like do a ton of research, but you know, I'm doing some, you know, reading of Wikipedia articles and things like that. But I also don't want to get like too into the weeds and start to try and like make connections and parallels that aren't actually there. I want the story to breathe and be its own thing as well, you know? So yeah, but I'm enjoying it. I think what maybe works for me is the fact that this is like almost like an alternate history. It's like based in historic realities, but I'm feeling like maybe that's what's working for me in this fantasy world, is like something that feels real to history and life as I personally know it, because that's what I also like in sci-fi. I like it to feel real. I don't necessarily like reading about alien civilizations and things like that. I like reading about stuff happening in humanity that I like recognize as society that I am a part of, if that makes sense. But I'm enjoying this. And so if there are other things that you know of in the similar vein of the Poppy War and Babel, where it's like almost a historic story being told in a fantastical way, I'd be interested to maybe try that and see if it's that historic piece that works for me, or if maybe it's just like R.F. Kuang is the girl for me. Anyways, yeah, that's just kind of my thoughts. Okay, I've read a little bit more since you saw me earlier today. I've read like, I don't know, 30 more pages. And I just have to ask, is Zhang gonna be a werewolf? Because there's this little quote, this paragraph here on page 114. Hi Max, of course you're coming right now, but I can't read the book with you in between me and the book. It says, I see Zhang in the infirmary sometimes. Inro keeps a walled-off bed just for him. He stays for a day or two every month and then leaves. That sounds like a werewolf to me. So that'll be interesting, since he's like the weird lore teacher that just like plays impractical jokes. And Rin has just like had her encounter with him in the garden, and she was talking about how she couldn't figure out if he was young or old, because like he didn't have lines on his face, but he didn't have like a youthful glow either. So is he a werewolf? Is he a werewolf? Anyways, this is also another warning. There are going to be spoilers in this. So I'm not quite a quarter of the way in, but I expect there will be more reactions and more spoilery type things. So yeah, I guess we'll see what happens. Bye. Hello, just a quick check-in. It's the same day. I've done a lot of reading today, obviously. And I just wanted to check in and say, this has the same wonderful pacing as Babel. I really appreciate how R.F. Kuang does not feel the need to give me all the nitty-gritty details of like the day-to-day life and tell me about every day, every week of this school. Like, I'm a quarter in and they're about to finish their first year. Ren is talking about getting like prepared for the trials, which are in like 2 weeks. So like the first quarter of the book has been her her realizing that she's basically being sold off for marriage, and then convincing her foster family to let her study for 2 years to take a test, and then the first year at that academy when she passed that test. So it is moving at a quick clip. I really appreciate how R.F. Kuang just cuts all of the unnecessary fluff, and like it's just what you need to know. I don't need to know all the daily unimportant nonsense. I don't. So I appreciate that. I'm intrigued to see if Rin is going to end up apprenticing with Lore or not. Jiang's mad at her right now because she basically told him, she's like, well, I wanted to do strategy, not lore. And so now he's been like pouting and ignoring her. So I'm intrigued to see what happens. So anyways, I think that's probably going to be my last check-in for the day. I've just done a lot of reading today, so I've had things to say. All right, I will talk to you later. Bye. Hello, it is March 11th, I think. I finally finished the tournament chapter. I wanted to finish it last night, but then I got distracted and had to do some other things, and I ended up not finishing it. So I finished it today before I watch Succession and get ready to watch some hockey later this evening. And Ren is like, I can see the unhinged elements already. She just like went absolutely ape shit on Neza, and then went to like Jiang's garden and like was gonna kill him until he like calmed her down. And I'm gonna go ahead and say, I'm pretty sure I've been saying Jiang's name like 8 different ways. I like looked up how to pronounce it, and it's still not sure I'm saying it correctly. But he had to like save her through some sort of magical healing. Wild. There's this part where I wanted to like scream when I read it. Jiang told her, "You have stumbled upon something you were not ready for. I never should have taught you the 5 frolics. From this point forward, you are just going to be a danger to yourself and everyone around you." "Not if you help me," she said. "Not if you teach me otherwise." And then he says, "I thought you just wanted to be a good soldier." And then she goes, "I do. But more than that, she wanted power." Power. Oh my God. Power. This is gonna... I'm so excited to see where this goes. She is like... she's going for it. And then it ends up with her pledging Lore, which I just knew that was going to happen based on like the conversation they had before where she hurt his feelings and he like started to ignore her because she wanted to pledge strategy. I just knew she was going to end up in Lore somehow, and it makes sense how she got there. Yeah. I think it's interesting because I think it was clear that she was thinking she would go strategy because that's kind of like one of the like most elite classes, I guess, at the school, the most elite pathways for training. And her whole reason for studying so hard to get into this school was so she could have a better life. That sounds very cheesy, but like a life of her own. She's not under the thumb of her foster family. She's not being forced to do unpaid labor. She's not being married off to someone like 3 times her age. You know, this would provide a job for her. Like that was her thing, was like it was going to give her a good position in the military. But then she like discovers this seemingly kind of like innate power in her, maybe. I don't know if it's innate, but like she really like she felt like she was on fire. So I don't know if that's like a metaphorical thing or like an actual thing, but like the healing that Zhang did for her was like magical and cooling. Like it physically cooled her down. So I assume that means it's something like a real fire in her. So I assume that's like some sort of innate power in her, whether that's something everyone can harness or gather or gain. I don't know yet, obviously. But yeah, I also thought it was interesting the conversation she had after she woke up from, she basically like lost a couple days after she went off the deep end, and you find out that Alton, who is this guy at the school that I haven't talked about, he is a Spearly, which was a warrior race that was kind of killed off by the Federation. Their enemies, what would be Japan in like our world. So he's like the last of his kind, and he was gonna pledge lore too, and like Jiang was like demanding that Alton be under his tutelage because he was afraid of the power that Alton had, and he was telling Rin that they were very similar to each other in that power. But the Empress had seen him fight, and so they said this thing, where is it? I asked Jima to let me train him, but the Empress intervened. She knew the military value of a Spearly warrior. She was so excited. In the end, national interest superseded the sanity of one boy. They put him under Irja's tutelage and honed his rage like a weapon instead of teaching him to control it. You've seen him in the ring, you know what he's like. And Zhang's not going to let that happen to Ren, basically. Really excited to see where this goes. I will talk to y'all later when I have something else to talk about. Bye. Well, I have to say, I did not expect this to take the turn of, like, gods. Like, I know they have been referencing gods before, but I did not expect them to play as much of a role as they seemingly are about to. Ooh, sorry. Rin has now like made it to the Pantheon, and now I've like started part 2, and like people seemingly have gods that take them on, and part of the reason that Zhang was so worried about Ren having the power that she has without control is it's seemingly that this like god power that certain gods will bestow upon people can turn them insane. So wasn't expecting that, but still enjoying myself. It's a snowy day, so I'm gonna try and read some sort of amount of this today. Yeah, I'll talk to y'all later. Okay, the war has started. The war has started. They are being invaded by Muggin, what is it? Okay. If I could open the map, that would be useful. Muggin. They've been invaded. The government has moved from like where the school is based, the normal capital. They have moved further south into a war capital. But everyone at the academy stayed to try and protect what they can, to hold the fort as much as they could. And yeah, the war has started, and I definitely see that this is gonna get violent. I can only imagine how much worse it's going to get. Rin's first kill was with a sword through a man's head, like up through his chin. That description was certainly something, so I can only imagine how much more intense and crazy it's gonna get with 2 more books after this. And she just like regained her fire abilities. She ended up calling the gods and called upon the Phoenix god, and he gave her flame and fire. Basically she was on fire. Yeah. And then the Empress came and cooled her down like Zhang did. So interesting. I'm like, I don't know, like halfway, maybe a little more than halfway through. yeah, I haven't read as much as I thought I was going to read today, but that's all right. Yeah, anyways, that's what I have to say. I can only imagine where things are going from here. Okay, still been reading, obviously, but I just found this interesting little bit that I wanted to share. So this whole time, Zhang's been telling Rin that the gods are not playthings, weapons. They're not to be trifled with. You are supposed to go to the pantheon to commune and communicate with them, but you're not supposed to like expect them to do your bidding. You're not supposed to be like commanding them or using them as like weapons, basically. But now some things have gone down, and Ren is now working in Alton's division, which is like, I don't know how to pronounce it. It is Cike. I've been pronouncing it psych, but they are working on honing her skills, her abilities, and he tells Ren, Zhang was right to be cautious. The gods are unpredictable. The gods are dangerous, and there's no one who understands them, not fully. But we at the Night Castle, that's where this, they're like assassins, basically. This is where they like are headquartered. We at the Night Castle have practiced the weaponization of the gods to an art. We come closer to understanding the gods than the old monks ever did. We have developed the power to rewrite the fabric of this world. If we don't use it, then what is the point? And I'm just like, ooh, that's some sort of foreshadowing. That's some sort of something. So I feel like we're definitely going to be getting into some tricky territory with the weaponizing of the gods and what that means. I don't know what that means. But yeah, interesting. Alright, that's probably the last bit of it. Whew. I'm going to end up reading today. I don't know if this vlog is even remotely watchable. I feel like my thoughts have not been as interesting or like as coherent as my Battle Royale vlog was, but I also haven't tried to start editing this yet, so I don't know, maybe I've been more coherent than I think. I don't know, I guess I'll find out. Anyways, bye. Hello, I have read a couple more chapters since I spoke to you last night. I wanted to talk about chapter 14, and hopefully I can do this in like a relatively coherent way, but I have a couple things tabbed, and I would have talked about them as I was reading the chapter, but my husband was on a work call and I didn't want to stop the flow of my reading. So anyways, so first I want to say this has definitely gotten way more fantastical once she has joined Psych and she is in, you know, like the war zone, the battle lines, things like that. It's definitely become more fantastical as you like see these other people's powers because of the gods they have brought into their lives. So the fact that I'm still enjoying myself says something. It's maybe like a little bit harder for me to read just as more fantastical elements have been added, but that's like, I think more so, I don't have a lot of practice reading stuff like this, so sometimes it takes more than one like read of a sentence or something to fully understand, but I think the way it was introduced in the beginning, where it was a very realistic world, the society they lived in like didn't really believe in these gods anymore. So the way it was introduced through Ren really worked for me. I don't know if I would have been as easily able to get into it if it had started, you know, at the beginning of the war and we're where Ren has already invited the Phoenix into, I was gonna say into her heart, which is not what the deal is, but like if she hadn't already like, there's a word I'm reaching for and I can't find it, dedicated herself to the phoenix, I guess. That's not really the right word either, but that's all I can come up with. If we had started at that point where she already had some powers and it was just more so about her finding the ability to control it, I think I probably maybe would have DNF'd this, but now I'm like, actually, I'm committed. I'm very intrigued to see where this goes. I'm still very intrigued by like the political aspects of this war, the things we're finding out about Nika, Nikan? I can't remember if it ends with an N or not. I don't know. Anyways, the country that she's from. I'm intrigued by that. The stuff with the warlords, how it's split into 12 different provinces, and there's like definitely tensions between all these warlords because it's not necessarily an actual unified country. They just kind of have an agreement with the Empress that they'll work together, but they don't necessarily like each other. And this war definitely seems to have people at odds. And then obviously I'm intrigued by the stuff going on between Nikan and Mugden. No, there's not a D in there. I don't know why I want to keep at Mugen. So that intrigues me and still keeps me very invested, which makes me think maybe I would like I don't know if historic fantasy is a thing, but like historic fantasy, like on the political side of things, I feel like I might like. And I'm not talking about like kings and queens. I don't like that. I'm talking about like countries, in politics between countries and things like that. I think I might enjoy. It's definitely violent. It continues to be violent. There's definitely some violence, and I can imagine it's only going to get more violent from here. I also wanted to talk about with the things that I have tabbed. In this, I don't think I've talked about spear, but Alton is a spearly, which was a race of, or which was an island that was kind of brought into Nikan, and then in the second Poppy War, they were massacred by the Federation. And Alton is like the last spearly. Well, come to find out that Rin is also a spearly. It starts off in the beginning that she's a war orphan. Her parents died in the war, and so she was living with a foster family, but she didn't, like, she was very young when it happened, so she had no memory. So the fact that I guess she was able to call the phoenix and bring the fire basically like confirms that she's a spearly. So now there are two of them left. So that's intriguing, but now that's starting to bring some interesting things to the fore for me, because there has been talk about that Nikan basically sacrificed the island of Spear so that Hesperia would come and protect them and end the Second Poppy War between Mugen and Nika. So that is there, but there is something, they're fighting, and Rin is talking about like just how powerful Alton is, because he has a like way better control of his fire abilities than Rin does, and she's like struggling to even call the phoenix to her, and she's thinking about like how could these people have been massacred, and there's just something going on there. I think we're in these further books we're gonna get into some like information about what happened at Spear and Nika's role in it. I think that's what I'm thinking. Things that keep sticking out to me is like the way they're talking about using gods as weapons. When Zhang had taught her to access the pantheon, he had only ever taught her to kneel before the deities, but the psyche pulled them down with them back into the world of mortals, and when they did, they were destructive and chaotic and terrible. When the shamans of the psyche prayed, they were not requesting that the gods do things for them so much as they were begging the gods to act through them. When they opened their minds to the heavens, they became vessels for their chosen deities to inhabit. I don't know, there's just this thing about like the weaponizing of gods is very interesting to me. She eventually comments on like how like before she wanted power, but now she's like afraid of not having her free will and like being at the call, not even the call of the god, but being unable to control herself when the god is working through her. And then she has this conversation with Alton after, when she was like, she failed to fight, like she couldn't call the phoenix, and she almost died and Alton had to save her. And she was like, I wasn't able to clear my mind, which is how Jiang taught her to like get to the pantheon. And then he replies, then don't. Open-minded meditation is for monks. It only gets you to the pantheon. It doesn't bring the god back down with you. You don't need to open your mind to all 64 deities. You only need our god. You only need the fire. And she's like, well, that's dangerous. Like, the whole reason Zhang was like trying to mentor her was to like protect her and keep her safe. And the empire is wanting these people that have the ability, the shamans, that have the ability to call to the gods and bring them back to earth. They are wanting them to put themselves at risk in more ways than like the regular soldier when they're going to war. Like obviously you're at risk of dying, but these people are like putting their minds at risk. Like they spiritually could lose themselves or like go insane. They are no longer themselves. Like this whole thing is like they are no longer who they are, but the vessel for the god. These are the things sticking out to me. I don't really know what they mean yet. It's just what is just interesting when I'm reading these things. I just finished chapter 14. I'm on page 322, so about 200 pages left. Yeah, I'm having a good time. I need to start editing this vlog. I'm afraid of how long it's going to take. I don't know, I have a feeling I'll probably check in again later tonight when I've done some more reading, but I need to stop for now so I can get some editing done. So, bye. Okay, so Neza is not dead, which I feared. The last time we saw him was at the battle at the school, when Ren went Super Saiyan in front of everyone. And it seemed like maybe it seemed touch and go when she left the last she saw him. But he just showed up at the port city they're in that I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce. He showed up. He's alive. But I'm going to say, if this ends up having a love triangle between Ren, Alton, and Neza, I'm gonna lose my fucking mind. So please, R.F. Kuang, do not do me like that. I'm begging. I do worry because it seems like a lot of the fantasy bookish community that I am aware of that has floated into my orbit. Maybe not all of it. And maybe there's a bigger part of the fantasy bookish community that I have not seen. But from what I have seen, so much of it is like centered on these like romantic relationships and little triangles and things. And like when I think about it, romance is the least important plot point that could happen in a book for me. But you know, I should trust her. She has me reading about gods fighting in a war. you know, people catching fire and things I never thought I would read about. So, you know, I should trust her and maybe I won't be mad. But if it's going in that direction, the way it feels right now, I will not be pleased. Hello. So last night I did a little bit more reading in bed. I actually ended up checking out a digital copy of The Poppy War to read on my phone in bed. And I took some notes while reading. I read the last 2 chapters in part 2, I think. Okay, so yeah, I read chapters 19 and 20 in bed, and I took some notes while I was reading in bed because some crazy stuff happened and I couldn't talk about it. I wasn't going to get out of bed to record at like 11 o'clock at night. All right, so there was a gas attack in the port city that they were fighting and protecting, trying to hold the line, and Neza was hit with the gas and Rin was gonna go save him, and Alton pulled her out of the gas, and Neza seems to be a prisoner of war probably, or maybe a casualty, but he was being taken away by Federation soldiers. So yeah, I will also say that Alton has gotten very intense and very scary. So I should have just trusted R.F. Kuang that this wasn't going to devolve into a love triangle thing, which is what I thought briefly at some other point. After that, her and Alton really got into it. There's been some tension between them in general since she hasn't been able to call the fire. And after this tear gas attack, well, I don't know if it was tear gas, but like mustard gas, I don't know, some sort of gas. And in their fight, she was able to call the fire. That was like a big thing. Like she was able to like call it on a whim and kind of put it away on her own, but not in battle. It was more so like in, because she was so mad and angry at Alton. I mean, he like hit her. Alton is like really going just off the rails. And then I'm not going to be able to find the quote in here, but someone mentioned that Alton had been like raised specifically as a warrior and was like force-fed opium as a child, so he could be able to call his fire at will. Like he was trained purposefully as being a weapon, and Alton has talked about how the reason he's able to call the fire so easily is that he is never not angry. Not quite in that Hulk way, but like basically that was the gist. So like that's pretty fucked up when you think about it, that the empire, that Nikara was feeding a child opium so that in the future they would be able to use him as like a super soldier. That's fucked up. Alton's lieutenant returned. He had been gone this whole time since she arrived at the port city. He returned. There was all this stuff, but his whole thing is like, I think they called him a seer. He is like much more in tune with the spiritual world. He spends like more time in the spiritual realm than like in the physical world. Rin goes to him to ask him to help her gain better control of being able to call the fire, and she tells him that there's someone blocking her, and it's a woman. And all the time she has gone to the Pantheon, there's been like a woman at the gate trying to warn her. I didn't realize while reading it, like that was part of the reason it was making it difficult for her to call the fire. So he takes her to the Pantheon. He is surprised by this woman. He doesn't know who she is. They have like intense conversation, which I quoted in here. Basically the woman tells Rin that she's trying to protect her, trying to save her from the Phoenix, because the Phoenix will like consume you. Rin says, I don't want to be saved. I want power. I want Alton's power. I want to be the most powerful shaman there ever was. So there is no one I can't save. Which is interesting because this is happening after Neza is taken by the Federation, and she was unable to save him. And she had mentioned, like, if she had had Alton's power at the time when the gas attack happened, she could have probably saved Neza. And then the woman at the gate says, that power can burn down the world. That power will destroy everything you've ever loved. You will defeat your enemy, and the victory will turn to ashes in your mouth. Oh my God. I think it's very clear that these god powers, these things that the shamans are able to do by being in touch with the gods, but specifically the phoenix, so like the Spearleys who have this connection with the phoenix god, there is a power that is beyond even their comprehension. Like, there's so much talk about how the shamans, how they perceive the world, and how this like allows them to reach the gods because they had this greater perception than like the average Nikarian, you know, like just a greater perception of how the spiritual world interacts with the physical world than just the average person. But I think there is still like way more than they can even understand, and that it comes with a great cost. Like, they realize that people will eventually go insane if they're not killed in the psych. But obviously there is just, I think there's more to it. So after that, he's able to banish this woman to the realm of the dead. I think she's going to be the previous ruler of Spear Island. There's been a lot of talk about the myth about that and how Spear was able to be massacred by the Federation soldiers in the Second Poppy War. And there's this, I can't remember if she's like an empress, a queen, what exactly her title is. But there's like a myth that she was in love with the Red Emperor, and so she killed herself, and then that allowed Spear Island to be raided and stuff like that. And there was a conversation between the psych members where I can't remember who said it. One of the people in the group told Rin that she like just refused to call the Phoenix. Like she refused to have that power to protect the island. So I'm thinking this woman is that empress, since she's supposed to be dead, and she's purposely trying to protect Rin from being consumed by the Phoenix, like being eaten alive, basically. So that's what I'm thinking right now, but it has not been confirmed in any way. And then they went to some like other spiritual realm, I can't exactly remember, where she was getting her hexagram read, which was kind of like reading the future, but not really. I didn't fully, totally understand what was going on there, except that it revealed that the battle at this port city was a trap, and that the Federation was like trying to distract them in this port city while they went through the mountains to get to the wartime capital. And so to confirm this reading, Alton tortured a Federation prisoner of war that they were keeping in the basement, and it was really truly disturbing. That whole section was so distressing to read, so disturbing. There was just a very disturbing side of Alton that we saw in this, and I think it's becoming very clear he is a lot angrier and more on edge than Rin realized, and therefore we realize as the reader. And he is certainly making some very intense, brutal decisions. Anyways, so that was kind of going through my notes from the 2 chapters I read last night. I was hoping to finish this today. I have, let's see, just a little over 100 pages. I don't know if that's going to happen or not because I actually ended up doing a whole bunch of stuff today, and it's almost 3 o'clock and I haven't even read it all today yet because I woke up late today and then I had to do stuff around the house, and then I ran out to do some errands, and that ended up taking up way more time than I anticipated. I did end up pre-ordering Yellowface by R.F. Kuang though, so that's exciting. And so yeah, I'm just like sitting down to get into reading for the day when I would have started reading a while ago if this was a normal day. But yeah, so probably won't finish today, but we'll see what happens. Okay, I tried to record me reading the first chapter in part 3, but my cats apparently did not want me recording, but I had to stop and take a little bit of a break because, oh my god, it's horrific. They were too late. The Federation had already made it to Nice, the war capital. They had slaughtered the entire city. It was horrific. They managed to find like one small little group of survivors who happened to include Kate, who was Ren's like only friend at the academy. He managed to survive, and a few others, and they're about to like go get a debrief on what they experienced during this massacre. But holy shit. Also, I honestly was expecting Kate to be dead. Ren had found a flag for his division when they were like searching the town. And I thought he was going to be dead. He isn't. But I'm expecting that not everyone's going to make it out of this series alive. I'm definitely expecting some main characters to be killed in this. Okay, this is unimportant, but I just saw someone refer to the Empire as Nikan, Nikan, Nikan. I've been calling it Nicara. I do not know what the name of this country is, because even the back of the book it says the most elite military school in Nikan, but then while Nicara is at peace. So I do not know. I'm gonna continue saying Nicara, I guess, but I assume there's some sort of difference between those two. I just don't know what they are. Okay, so we have learned, I talked about how Alton was force-fed opium as a kid, but I assumed that it was the Empire that had done that to him. However, we learn that the reason Alton is so powerful is because he is so full of hate and rage because he was stolen by the Federation, and they performed like awful experiments and things on him and other Spearleys because they wanted to find out how they had those powers. The Federation needed to know how the Spearleys got their powers. When they occupied the Snake Province, they built a research base opposite the island and spent decades in between the Poppy Wars kidnapping Spearleys, experimenting on them, trying to figure out what made them special. Alton was one of those experiments. And I'm not going to get into the details, pretty gruesome, pretty awful, but explains why Alton, first of all, is like very like just angry in general, but explains why he's so specifically powerful. It's because Alton likes to let his hatred fester, likes to incubate it as long as he can. Now do you understand the source of his power? It's not because he's a Spearly. It's nothing genetic. Alton is so powerful because he hates so deeply and so thoroughly that it constitutes every part of his being. Your phoenix is the god of fire, but it is also the god of rage, of vengeance. Alton doesn't need opium to call the phoenix because the phoenix is always alive inside of him. So that's pretty intense. Alton's gonna do something crazy. I guess I'm not 100% sure exactly what's happening. I think Ren has said she's gonna join him, but they're gonna go to like a prison in the mountain that they've kind of talked about throughout the book, which I believe is where the previous members of Psych have been, where like once they lose control and they can't necessarily I don't know if you would say they can't let go of the gods or the gods won't let go of them. They're like imprisoned in this prison in the mountain. And I guess Alton wants to release them and wants to make a like army out of the people in that prison is what I'm getting, to fight the Federation. But the seer guy, Chaghan, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Chaghan? I don't know. He does not think that it is smart or wise or controllable to let these people out of prison. So, yeah. Let's see. I am on page 440 out of 520, I think. 530, 527. So, I don't know if they're actually gonna break out the prison in this or if that's what book 2 is gonna be. Poppy War 2, Electric Boogaloo, let's break the guys out of prison. Unsure. There's less than 100 pages. I guess like 80-ish pages, which, I guess they could break people out of prison. I don't know. Anyways, I'm gonna go back to reading now. Okay, I don't know how in frame I am right now, but I don't want to flip open my viewfinder. But I guess I was right originally that the Federation also fed Alton opium, because there was a conversation right here between him and Ren, and he said they trained you like a dog at Singard, which is the academy. He phrased it like that, did he? He said they fed you opium. Alton stiffened. They trained soldiers at Singard, he said. With me, they did their job. Continues, they'd done more than train a spear elite. They had created an Avenger. That's the narrator, not Alton. So, yeah, I guess everyone's just using Alton. But I'm also really highlighting my reading comprehension over here. So, yeah. Greetings. It's the next day. I ended up doing a little more reading while I was in bed last night. I have just under 40 pages left, but I thought I would give you my thoughts on the little bit of reading that I did since we spoke last. I took some notes, obviously. One, I figured out the difference between Nikan and Nikara. Nikan is the country and Nikara is the descriptor or the people. So Finland is the country and Finnish is the descriptor. I finally figured it out. I guess I'd never really seen RA as a people indicator or descriptor indicator. Whatever. It just took me a while to figure it out, but now I know. So last we talked, Alton and Rin were talking about trying to break out the gods that had been imprisoned in the mountain. They go and do that, or attempt to do that. They go to the mountain. They find Jian there. I don't know if I mentioned or not. At the battle at the academy, he disappeared into a void, and it seems like he immured himself in the mountain after, or when he got sucked in through the void. So they talked to him for a little bit. and he is like very against what they're doing. Alton seems to think he can control these gods. They go and attempt to break out another of the gods, and it goes poorly. This god escapes. In the mountain, they do not have access to like the powers of the gods, which is why they imprison the people who have become so consumed by god powers. They end up going to the mountain because they cannot reach the spirit world basically through the mountain. This man escapes, and when they go to leave the mountain, Federation troops are there, knowing that they don't have their powers because they are in the mountain. Federation troops kidnap them and take them to a medical lab. And this is where apparently the Federation had been experimenting on Spearleys. This is where Alton like grew up for a while, was being experimented on. It is the same doctor who knows Alton. That bit in the experimental lab was very disturbing, distressing, definitely lots of like Unit 731 vibes. Even has the doctor was like, I can't remember, Shiro something or another, and the like man who led Unit 731 during World War II was Shiro Ishii, so definitely some parallels there. Very distressing. I have just a page number written here, so let me take a glance at that page number and see what I wanted to talk about. Well, first, I want to read this thing. Ren had been tortured, bound, beaten, and starved, but her mind was her own, her God was her own. She would die before she betrayed it. I think this is something that keeps sticking out to me, is this tension between Ren and like wanting power, but also wanting to remain her own, like safe in her mind. Her mind is her own, her thoughts are her own, but if you want the power of the gods, it is in diametric opposition to maintaining yourself, maintaining your own singular being. But here she is seeing it in a different way, where it's the god is her own god, and by letting the god in, letting the phoenix use her as a vessel, she is still her own because it's her god and her decision, if that makes sense. So I find that interesting. There's a little bit more on that page that I want to touch on, but I'll touch on it a little bit later. The doctor is using plague experiments, that is planning on like releasing plague infested fleas into cities in Nikon. That is also something that Unit 731 was doing. Not great. Continuing to see parallels. But in these conversations, while Shiro is doing torturing of sorts, he keeps revealing information. So on page 478, like I was mentioning, he talks about how the Red Emperor, who was like the Nikon leader or I guess Nikara leader during or between the Poppy Wars, I think. I don't know. He says, how do you think the Red Emperor kept the Spearleys on a leash? Use your head, my dear. When Spear lost its independence, the Red Emperor sent crates of opium over to the Spearleys as an offering. A gift from the colonizing state to the tributary. This was deliberately. Previously, the Spearleys had only ingested their local bark in their ceremonies. I don't know if I've touched on, but like the reason they use psychedelics is because it helps facilitate reaching the spiritual realm, getting to the pantheon, things of that nature. They were used to such mild hallucinogens that to them smoking opium was like drinking wood alcohol. When they tried it, they immediately became addicted. They did anything they could to get more of it. They were slaves to opium just as much as they were slaves to the emperor. And then there was one other thing he revealed. I don't know if I'm going to be able to find the direct quote. Oh, and then he later reveals that the Empress is how they knew they were at the mountain prison to get them. There's nothing like interesting to actually read. That's what he told them. But this has me like wondering about the truth of these things he's telling them, because, you know, he is a Federation experimenter and he's like trying to get a rise out of them. You know, I've talked about, I am skeptical. No, skeptical. I don't know. I'll just say it's skeptical of how the Nikari Empire was treating the island of Spear and Spearleys. So like, I definitely could believe the opium thing, but telling them that their Empress purposefully sacrificed them to the Federation is interesting, because how did she know they were there? They seemed to come to the conclusion that it was the Empress, as being the only person that knew that they were there, but I don't remember them telling her, because she had fled the war capital before everyone was massacred and slaughtered. So I'm not sure how she would have known their plan, because it happened after she had left. But I don't know. Maybe I'm just forgetting something that happened. But you know, I'm also like, just, I wouldn't want to trust Shiro as like telling the truth. Okay, and so then through this, they're like able to, Alton and Ren are able to like go to where like seemingly all the Spearly spirits have ended up after they were massacred and died. They like end up on a spiritual version of Spear. Rin can like feel this like rage within all of these Spearleys, these spiritual Spearleys, wanting revenge. She can like feel it, and like they cannot rest until they are vindicated. Vindicated is the wrong word, but she could tell this is where Alton was tapping in for his rage. Like how he became so powerful was because there's still this so much vengeance still in the spiritual world for Spearleys, and they're the last two, that she can tell like this is where Alton is getting his power. But I have to say, I think that's maybe also why he was so upset when she was unable to call the fire, or was like kind of refusing to tap into the fire because she was afraid, because he had access to this very deep, communal, ancestral rage and revenge vibes. Then they, Rin is able to tap into that and becomes the most powerful she's ever been, and they escape the medical lab, and they're trying to escape, but Alton sacrifices himself so she can get to the island of Spear, because they're like very close. Like he's gonna sacrifice himself to create enough of a buffer so Rin can swim out to Spear and get some sort of information to find out more. So that's where I'm at. I have like less than 40 pages left. Woo. So I get to sit down, and I think I'm just gonna power through these last two chapters. I think I'll record a little bit of me reading for any reactions that might happen, and then I'm gonna close out this vlog. It's really long, I know that. But I've had a really good time reading this, so let's see how it ends. moved downtown. I moved downstairs so I could talk about this chapter I just read. Wow. So Ren ends up on Spear. She goes to the temple. It's confirmed that the woman at the gate of the Pantheon is the former queen of Spear, who did not protect them, chose not to give herself to the Phoenix, to ask him to save Spear. She said she acted from a higher principle. Ren says she acted from selfishness. And then she says, if I hadn't given up Spear, the world would be burning down. I burned away my body, my power, and Spear's hope for freedom. I gave my country to the Red Emperor, and I maintained peace. And Ren is like, how is death and slavery peace? And basically, Ren's like, get the fuck out of my way. So she goes to the Phoenix. They make a deal. And she basically says she wants to destroy Mugen. She says that many people will die, but many more will live. And for the sake of her vengeance, it was worth it. This was divine retribution for what the Federation had wreaked on her people. This was justice. They aren't people, she whispered. They're animals. I want you to make them burn, every last one. The Phoenix asks what she will give him as payment for giving her this thing that she so wants. The price to alter the fabric of the world is steep. And she said, I can give you worship, she promised. I can give you an unending flow of blood. And then he gives her what she wants, basically. She is immediately like overtaken by pain. She's burning, she's on fire. And it says, it felt as if she was being consumed by fire. No, she was whole, but something was burning inside. Something was disappearing. And then this reminded me of, I didn't talk about it, but while she was at the academy, she got her first period. And she was in so much pain, and she found it just like so troublesome that she ended up taking like a potion that burned up her uterus, so she would not have a period anymore, but she would never be able to carry children. She would never be able to get pregnant. And so that's what this reminded me of. Like, she made a sacrifice then to continue in school without distraction, and she's making a sacrifice now, seemingly of like her humanity or remorse. She's making that sacrifice now so that she can take revenge against the Empire. Of course, the heat just started. So she's making this sacrifice of some part of her emotional, spiritual being so she can take revenge against the Federation for all the people, her ancestors that were killed off by them. And I have a feeling it's going to boomerang around on Nikan too, because they allowed it to happen. They played a role in the allowing of Spear to be massacred. So yeah. And then there's just like a lot of her just like when she comes out of it, like everything she touches, there's fire coming out of her hands. She has a fire coming out of her nose. Like everything is like on fire, and she doesn't quite know how to control it yet. So I have one chapter left, about 20 pages. So I am going to do that reading now. Okay, I have finished. Fair warning again. There will be spoilers. I am spoiling the last chapter. So if you don't, for some reason, if you've watched this whole thing, but you don't want the very end spoiled, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you, but I'm getting into it. So Rin's power, her wish from the Phoenix, had a volcano explode on Mugen, destroyed the entire island. Just catastrophic. Obviously, like a parallel to the nuclear bombs. Wow. Also, the twins, whose names I can never remember, they were sent by Alton to flood the valley, to break the dams, to let the river flood the valleys. And they also killed a whole bunch of people. Kite joined them, joined the Psyche to go and find Alton and Rin when they did not meet up at a designated location. They spent 2 days looking for them at the medical facility. I feel like it has a name and I can't remember what it is. Eventually Kite was like, maybe we should go to Spear, and that's where they found Ren. Or sorry, the Dead Island, I believe is what they call it now. And he was very upset with the choices that Ren made when she came back to consciousness. Everything she's touching is not fire anymore, so I assume that the uncontrollable fire burning through her after she got back from the Phoenix had to do with the volcano that was exploding on Mugen. She's on the warpath. I mean, she basically said that she's going after the Empress next. I was very right in that that Nikan has some things to answer for, and she is gonna go after the Empress. There was some hindsight. What am I trying to say? There was some 2020 is hindsight sort of deals when trying to put together the hexagram that she had earlier. The seer was starting to put some pieces together about how the Empress had betrayed them at the stone prison, the mountain prison. So apparently she did know. That was either I missed it or I forgot it, or it was just explained at that point. But the Empress did know that they were going to the stone prison. And so, yeah, she did stitch them up, as the Brits would say. Yeah, so that's pretty crazy. The last page, holy guacamole. She is now the leader of the Psyche since Alton is dead. My battery's about to die. Give me a second. So the god that got out of the stone mountain when they went to attempt that plan, he is still out and about. What is his name? Fagin, I think, something like that. He's still out and about causing chaos, so they're gonna have to deal with him in the next book. They had a god to kill, which is the Fagin, a world to reshape, and an empress to overthrow. And then like the end is Ren feeling that, how do I want to put this? The Phoenix had told her that the gods do not force people to do things they don't already want to do. Zhang was wrong. She was not dabbling in forces she could not control, for the gods were not dangerous. The gods had no power at all except what she gave them. The gods could affect the universe only through humans like her. Her destiny had not been written in the stars or in the registers of the Pantheon. She had made her choices fully and autonomously. And though she called upon the gods to aid her in battle, they were her tools from the beginning. She I'm like reading the very end. She was no victim of destiny. She was the last spearly commander of the Psyche and a shaman who called the gods to do her bidding. And she would call the gods to do such terrible things. Jesus Christ, Ren. Oh my god. And that's the end of the book. That is the end of the book. I'm so excited for book 2. I won't be vlogging that one because this vlog is insane. I'm gonna be taking a week off because I'm waiting for a book to... The physical book is available at my library, but I think I'm gonna read it digitally because I can highlight things and it's easier for me to reference, and I can read it on the go, and there's just less issue than reading it physically. Holy cow, I had such a good time. 5 stars. So crazy, so intense. I cannot wait to see what insanity Ren is gonna wreak in book 2. Yeah, there's so much I liked about this. Obviously, like, I'm not gonna do like a whole summary or anything like that because you just watched this whole vlog. It took me about 8 days to read, so this is the second week of March reading vlog. I just spent it reading The Poppy War. But holy guacamole, it was so good. So good. I'm glad I picked it up. I'm glad I read it. Wow. Really has definitely shifted some perspectives for me on fantasy, that fantasy can work for me. I just have to find the right fantasy. So yeah, if you know other fantasy that is like paced similarly to The Poppy War, where like the writer will skip past 2 years of just like Ren meditating and doesn't feel the need to write pages and pages of like Ren having to meditate. It's just like, it took me 2 years to get here and now we're here. Like literally it went through 2 years and like a page. So if there are other books paced like that or historic in similar ways to this, I would love to hear those suggestions. Yeah, I'm gonna give it a week before I move to book 2. Usually I would immediately move in, but 1, I'm waiting for a digital version, but 2, I want to read some other stuff. I haven't had a chance to like read anything else. It's been over a week since I have finished a book. I think it's almost 2 weeks at this point since I have read a book or like finished a book. So I would like to read some other things. But yeah, wow, had a good time. Thanks for watching this insanely long video. I'd love to talk to you about the Poppy Wars in the comments. All right, I will see y'all next week with my 3rd week of March reading vlog. All right, bye.